Yeah, all right. Let me explain what we're doing then. So we're telling stories of the most impressive boss kills.
Yeah.
But it's not the same as like hard bosses or interesting bosses. It's like what we as raiders found impressive. So, like, there's a couple that you've done. There's obviously the Kel'Thuzad one, and the big thing there was really that it wasn't a hard fight, but you went and did all the flasking and stuff, which was kind of unheard of at the time. But the other one, of course, is Firefighter, which was a pretty goddamn big deal. Now, I don't know whether you agree with those two choices, because you've got quite a long history. Like, we were interviewing Roger as Roger Brown, and he's all kinds of different ones. He's like, it wasn't really Kill Jaden. What we found impressive was something else. So I don't know from your history whether there's another fight that you think we should consider.
Let me think. There's so many.
It's really the ones that you were like, I can't believe we did that. Because obviously, the whole purpose of this video for me is, while the general audience goes, wow, Kill Jaden was awesome, it's like, well, he was also broken. So it wasn't like, for us doing it at the time, we were just fighting a broken fight. Sure, it has a shitload of pulls or whatever, but it wasn't... I think they prefer, like, Fallen Avatar, because that was like... That was a fight that was killable, but it was insane.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Let me think. That's actually a good question.
Yeah, it's the one that you were like, this is my proudest kill. Sure, we got the world first there. I mean, I don't think Nihilum... I was looking through the history. They didn't... That was the only world first they actually got in Nax, I believe.
Yeah, we just got the last one. Which is kind of like a funny story, because the boss despawned at 1% for us when we pushed forward, and we had reset the morning after.
So tell us that story. Like, I'm here for stories, that because I don't know how much of this will pull out for the video. It might only be 2 minutes, but if you're okay with it and you're happy with it, we can certainly release the interview as like a full thing.
Yeah, of course. No, that's no problem.
So what happened? So take us through Kel'Thuzad a little bit. What was happening in the guild at the time?
Well, the guild got quite a new recruits. Around 4 horsemen. A lot of the people actually transferred with us to Ensidia later on. Buskill and Mook, probably the most prominent names, along with Kungan, of course. Around 4 horsemen, we started to get really good recruits. And from there on, we started to progress rapidly compared to before.
So was that tank recruits for 4 horsemen? Because obviously 4 horsemen is famous for ripping guilds apart because big guilds stole everybody's tanks. Or was this just overall?
No, obviously helped because we kind of leached tanks from other places with, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, 4-parted you need for the taunt resist for 4 horsemen. So it's kind of mandatory that you had the Dreadnought set. Yeah. So that obviously helped that we could leech tanks from other places. But just a general roster improvement of, as I said before, Buskill and Mook and also Quans. Comes into my memory, just really strong players.
Danish players?
No.
You guys are all team Danish.
No. Mook is Swedish, Quans is Finnish, and Buskill is somewhere down east, Slovenia or Slovakia or something.
Somewhere down east.
The land forgotten. But the skill level just increased from there on.
Why? Why did that happen? So, I mean, Nihilum wasn't... I'm trying to think back, because it was my early days of WoW. Nihilum hadn't made a name for themselves, really, as far as I know, other than leveling. So it was all about guilds like Death and Taxes, I think Curse. That's all I can really remember from back then. Were you aiming for a world first? Was Kungan driving for that, or were you driving for that? Because you've been in there since the start, right?
Yeah, I have. Well, the history of Nihilum is the majority of the core of the raiders in Nihilum was a lot of like Danish old Counter-Strike players. Me and I think we were 9 or 10 other players who were always competitive driven while having fun, of course. So we always had that like competitive will. We wanted to win, but we didn't have like a common goal playing that was world first. That came later on. And I think the more you play as a guild and you see you get better and better, and obviously Kungan helped a lot because he was a good raid leader.
Yeah.
And And you can say what you want about Kungen, but he raid leaded through text.
Yeah, what is the story
primarily.
there? Because I've heard, at least as far as I know, historically Nihilum Kungen raid leaded via text, and there's some infamous screenshots of you two like arguing over Caligos, I think.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean the guild wasn't on voice comms. Like, a lot of you were on voice comms, just Kungen didn't join in, or it just wasn't done for raid leading.
We started towards the end to go on voice comm, all of us together, but actually for the majority of the time we were just separated into groups, just sitting on our own TeamSpeak back then. So like the Danes were playing with each other, and then there was some fractions of, let's say, the Swedes. I can't remember in details, but we weren't on a united voice communication. But we just had so much respect from the raid leading from Kungen, so there's a lot of role playing practicing as well. So when we did a boss, or before we did a boss rather, he would sit and spam raid chat and have us do all kinds of like testing. Okay, we're gonna say the boss comes here, everyone moves to here, or when he wrote something, he wanted to see people go from X to Y. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really role play practicing before we did the tries, and then just a general respect, and then people just focusing on his spamming and yell and raid warning.
So during a raid boss, then you would have like maybe groups of 4 of you in a channel, and then there'd be another TeamSpeak with like 4 or 5 people in it, and that's the way it was kind of worked.
Yeah, it was a different time, but we didn't really have rules per se for communication. But the Danes always spent time together. We also did before, so we were sitting on a voice communication like we were, I think 9 or 11 people sitting in the same voice comm, and then the fractions was pretty much split. I don't know if everyone was on communication with different groups, but there weren't a fixed group for communication.
Yeah, there wasn't a like. So what we're used to today is like, hey, we're raiding, everybody jump on voice.
Yeah.
There was no requirement as a guild to be on voice, so people just went wherever they wanted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Only towards the end it started to shift more on, like, the more we progressed and the better we got. Obviously, we came on voice communication, but like a general rule of Nihilum was we didn't really use voice communication.
What do you mean by the end? Is that the end of vanilla or the end of the guild's time before it transferred over to Ensidia?
That's the end of vanilla, because Burning Crusade was a whole nother story of like only in a good way, because that's where we became really good. That was really in the Burning Crusade.
So you get so what I'm gathering is then through Naxxramas, no one's talking about you guys in the world first race, but what is happening is people are taking notice. You're killing bosses really quick. You're actually only a couple behind, and then more good players start flocking towards you.
I would always say we were kind of a dark horse, but obviously the big name back then was Death and Taxes. Mm-hmm. That was like our big rival.
Until it exploded.
Yeah.
If you don't know the story, for anyone listening to this, I suggest you research it. I'm not retelling it here. But that guild did explode.
But there were like this whole Europe versus USA kind of vibe going on, you know?
So, it still is today.
Yeah, I know. And will probably be forever.
Yep.
So that was our like main competition, and obviously like people expected Death and Taxes to get the Kelsos art kill as well, because they heard murmurs of us having the boss low, but they didn't really know how low we really got it, because if I remember correctly, I am pretty sure we went to we got the boss down to under 1%. We went to get all the world buffs in the world we could possibly get, like,
which
really
was extreme at the time. Like, it's hard to explain. It's done now in Classic. It actually makes me kind of sad. In Classic, it's expected of guilds who aren't even progressing. You know, it's a very normal thing that they do is collect every world buff. But even you guys flasked the whole raid, I think, which was so extreme at the time.
Yeah, the cost of it alone back then was like insane. Like, also the time, like, you had to spend farming Fellwood for Whipper Roots and Night Breath, I think it was called, was also like, I didn't do so much else but gaming back then. So let's just say there was a lot of nights where you just sat in Fellwood looking at a goddamn flower, waiting for it to spawn, because you needed all kinds of consumables in the game.
How did you feel about that at the time? Like, are we going too far, or did you feel like that motivation is like, oh my god, we could get the world first here?
being a young man without a girlfriend back then, I don't think you really had. And if you loved the game because it was new and you played with friends back then, I don't think you really had. Okay, we're going way too far. That came later on for me personally. But back then, when the game was new, you were young and you were loving the game. You just, for me personally at least, I felt the more prepared I am, the better. And you always want to be as prepared as possible. Or I at least wanted to be as prepared as possible. Because I'm also a hugely competitive person, so you always wanted to compete on damage meters, etc. And for that reason, you wanted to be as prepared as possible.
Yeah. So you felt good. You felt good about it. Was the? I guess I have to ask this question. I'm in full interview mode now, and I'm probably going to use like 20 seconds of this interview.
Yeah.
But you've obviously had some people who joined the guild, and then it started to accelerate. And the problem that you see in a lot of guilds, and we cover this a lot in Drama Time, is when the leadership, and because you were an officer, I believe, when the leadership is like, we're going further, now we're camping like Fellwood for Whipper Roots or whatever, we're going really, really heavy. Was there a feeling in the guild like, this isn't what I signed up for, or was it literally a united front?
That's a united front. We were all big, to say it out blunt, big nerds. We loved the game, we loved the guild, we loved playing. So... like, obviously, some people had more times than others, and that was what it is. But as I said, it was a different time, so it wasn't so strict that you were obviously, like, it was mandatory to be prepared, but it wasn't like, if you didn't have 60 Whipper Roots, if you only had 40, it's not like you're not going to raid back then. As long as you showed the dedication as much as possible, it was fine. Back then, it wasn't so hardcore or extreme rather as the requirements is today. But that's just the old man ranting. I think like when I see some of the requirements now, it's absolutely insane.
Why do you think how half of my videos are like, dude, like, stop, Blizz, please. We just want to raid, bro. That's all we want to do. Okay, so let's go to. We obviously had at the time is Death and Taxes, I believe. Leaked a video of Saffron farming. They reached Saffron first. Yeah. Was that a motivation for you? Because I'm not sure. I actually don't know how far behind you guys were, or whether it was the same week of reaching Saffron and then hitting this frost resist wall that we didn't know was coming until that point.
I think we knew, if my memory plays me correct, we kind of knew about the frost resistance going into it because Death and Taxes were a bit ahead of us. I think the will came around 4 Horsemen.
Mm-hmm.
When we started to get momentum, we started to get better players, and we actually started to see, okay, we actually have a shot of this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also like a united front because everyone wanted to. Obviously, when you see you have a chance to get the gold medal, obviously you want to go for the gold medal.
Yeah.
So it really took pace from 4 Horsemen and onwards.
Well, that's cool. Okay, so let's move on to Kel'Thuzad itself then. So you get there second, I believe.
Yeah.
You reach Kel'Thuzad second. You're obviously thinking, okay, Death and Taxes have got a little bit of an advantage of us. What's the fire? They're like... And you also told a little mention there that Kel'Thuzad actually despawned on you at 1%.
Yeah.
So let's take us through that process then.
Well, that was obviously... It was a mental test for a lot of people because... we really thought we were going to get it on that night. And to go to get all the world buffs, to be excited, to be united, just thinking, okay, we're going to do this, which World First was also a big thing already back then.
Mm-hmm.
To see, we enter the instance and then there's no boss and it's like 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning.
Why were you raiding so late then?
Because we had a shot for it. So it was very, very extreme back then that we would raid above the normal raid hours because, again, as I said, it was a different time. So it's not like we raided 7 days a week, 20 hours a day. But we still upped the rating because we saw there was a chance to get the world first. So obviously we spent the extra time needed for it. So obviously, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, take me through a raid reset. Because am I thinking, or I'm sure people are asking themselves, is like, did you wait till 3 a.m.? Or were you doing trial pulls of Kel'Thuzad until you felt you were ready to go and get the world buffs, and now we've definitely got the kill? Everybody's happy, everyone knows how this fight works, let's go and do it now? Or did you like hold the raid back? Because big thing a lot of people don't remember is server lag was so bad, especially in Wrath, all the way up till Wrath, I should say, that you couldn't actually raid normal raid hours. The servers couldn't handle it.
Yeah,
was that a factor?
Well, obviously, it played to some degree a factor. I remember Thaddeus being like a server destroyer. Like somebody, you just knew if someone pulled Thaddeus, the whole server would go mental. So obviously, it skewed like the raid hours maybe to you played a bit more than you usually would. But I also think, as I said, everyone had the common goal, and everyone wanted to use the extra hours or get like trying to get the world first. For us, I think as soon as we saw we actually had a shot of it, we went for it. so that was a mental test, because the boss itself was extremely random. Like there's a lot of boss, but there's like a lot of RNG with the polymorphs and the frost balls and the thing beneath the ground and everything. So like when you get a good pull in and you really try to get all the buffs in the world and go for glory, and you come see the boss is no longer there, and you know that is a reset. That was a hard one.
So they, because it was coming up to the weekly reset. That was your last chance of the week to get it done. So it wasn't a case it despawned on you like mid fight. It's not something like we saw recently in the world first race with Limit. It just wasn't there. Yeah,
no. We got it to under 1%, and then it wasn't there. So, well, congrats us, I guess.
Oh, that feels bad. That's pretty rough.
Yeah, that was the longest. I remember my boss was very kind to let me go early, but I had to go to work at 8. So like, go to bed at 3, knowing that Death and Taxes is probably having a bit shot of getting the world first, at least working till 12, just hurrying home, and then just starting a fresh reset and then going all out ham.
And you had to clear everything. You couldn't do raid reset IDs, right? So you had to clear the whole instance again.
Yeah, we did a full sweep.
But so 12 o'clock in the afternoon, you had the 40 players ready, did you?
Yeah.
And you smashed it that day, I believe.
Yeah, we did it in the same day.
Was it a disappointing kill then? Because you'd obviously been so close. You've had that adrenaline up till 3 o'clock in the morning. You've been and got all them world buffs. And I imagine getting those world buffs the night before, you were like fired up. Like, we're about to get the world first. Like, so it wouldn't have even, you would have been fired up. And then to have that disappointment, did it feel when you got that world first that like, because this is the one people remember. No one really remembers world first Nefarian or Ragnaros. Kel'Thuzad's the one people talk about to this day. Yeah. Did it feel disappointing, or was the hype there?
Nah, the hype was there. I joined the Nerd Scream Club back then, I remember.
Oh, you still do today?
Yeah, I do, but I had younger lungs back then, so the screams were higher, and I lived alone.
Yeah, so didn't have people in the beds nearby. there's no wives and things to take care of.
Exactly. That helped a lot.
Oh, that is awesome. But that's a great story, and that's awesome. I'm not sure which one we'll look at, because the boss I actually wanted to talk to you about is, of course, you were part of the Ensidia culmination between SK Gaming, I think they were. Like, so the Curse went from Curse to SK Gaming to, and then you went to 25th November. Yeah. I had to do my homework on this because I've forgotten about the 25th November nonsense.
Yeah.
And that was something. But you did actually, to be fair, we should probably talk about it a little bit, because you guys did actually ruin raiding for many of us, because it's very true at Wrath of the Lich King, and a lot of people who probably weren't there, who are listening to this, weren't there for the start of Wrath of the Lich King, but you cleared every raid instance on the day the game came out.
Yeah.
All right, take us through it a little bit. It's not a boss we want to talk about for this video, but I would love to hear the story, and I'm sure many of our viewers would as well.
Regarding Firefighter?
No, let's go with, before we get to Firefighter, it's the Burning Crusade. Nihilum is...
sorry.
Let's go back to that. So it's the Burning Crusade.
Yeah.
Nihilum is kicking ass and taking names. I believe you claimed world first on everything up until the Sunwell.
Yeah, pretty much.
So that was, for those who remember, Magtheridon, Kael'thas, not Lady Vash. Method did claim that one. Method did get Lady Vash, technically. What came after that? Illidan.
Yeah.
But then in the Sunwell, the rise of SK Gaming, which were formerly Cursed. So they've been sponsored and became SK Gaming. And then there was it was a strange time, I think, for you guys. Maybe you could take us through a little bit. Is that towards the end of the Burning Crusade, there was a lot of talk, at least amongst the Rainy community, that Nihilum of old was kind of dead. And there was a lot of people appearing in that guild. It almost looked like the roster completely changed, which then led into Wrath of the Lich King with the formation of ultimately would be called Ensidia. So what was happening there?
Well, you're kind of hitting the hammer on the nail with like the roster changing completely, because the more the expansion went on, obviously people started to burn out. A simple thing as maybe people like personally started to, I don't have any like specific examples, but also like examples with like the whole mentality of the guild. Like a lot of different, some people wanted to win at all costs, some people were more like laid back or relaxed. That obviously helped to affect the positivity or like the morale of the guild in not a good way.
Would you say, sorry to interrupt, I'm just wondering, would you say that raiding starting to become a business started to play into that? Because this was really the time we were seeing guilds get sponsored, SK Gaming, as we've seen, and we were seeing things like Kungan versus Method on stages, people demonstrating stuff. Do you think, because that's been a controversy for a while, because later on we would see the fall of Method to Serenity for the same reason, that business and money was getting involved, affects everybody differently. Was that a factor in this, or was this a bit too early for stuff like that?
I think that's a bit too early. I think the primarily reason was we didn't keep the skill level up of our like hardcore roster. We started to get a lot of changes in the roster, and it can be some big shoes to fill when you're replacing like a solid hardcore DPS that always does high DPS and no errors pretty much.
Yeah.
And also if you have to play into the factor that you cannot always expect new people to go into a guild and just perform from day one. And if people are used to high performances from a guild as a whole, you start to get affected by it doesn't go as it always used to go, even on farm rates. You're still wiping to stupid things. The DPS goes down. People die to stupid mistakes and everything. So if you look at it in the bigger picture, I think that has been the biggest reason why the guild started to I'm not going to say rapidly decline, but at least decline.
Yeah, because you've changed now to being expected to get world first. And I know after talking to many of the guys, excuse me, I talked to many of the guys in Method about this process because they've been around for so long, is a huge amount of recruits that come towards these guilds generally look like they have the skill level, but when it comes to the actual practical application of that into world first raiding, they just don't have it. They expect, it's almost like they expect because they're in the guild, the world first will come, without giving enough credit to the fact that you still need to be the world first raider to make that happen. And if they, and that's when it drifts off. I'm actually looking, as we're talking, I'm looking at the rosters for your Kael'thas kill versus your Muru kill. Yeah. Good 50% of the names are different.
Yeah. So and a lot of like the people we lost during that time, like a lot of, I'm not gonna pat my own head, but I'm gonna say the Dane, like we had a big chunk of people that started the guild was the Counter-Strike people of old, like all the Danish people and some other people, obviously. But they made a huge difference, both like mentally, like in the atmosphere of the guild, and also in like the competitive side of it, because they probably had a bigger urge to win and maybe were a bit stricter or harsher on when people made errors. And I know everyone makes mistakes. That's only logical in a game to happen. But we kind of bullied people. I'm not that proud to say it, but like you're young and
I've told. Believe me, I have told my horrible stories on this channel before. I was right there with you.
So the toxicity also rose in the guild, like and some people maybe didn't mean it as toxic, but a lot of people perceived it toxic because we're different people and we take things differently, and especially words differently on the internet. So obviously that didn't help the guild per se, and when things maybe doesn't start to go as good as it did even 3 months earlier, that is a big benefactor of like teams or guilds in this case will start to split up because people want some changes, some fresh air.
Yeah. Well, it's all fun and games. It's one of the things I really appreciate about. I probably should point out, Kenny is currently in my guild. I was actually surprised by our raid leader Alex, because I'd met Alex IRL maybe 6 times before we actually ever played WoW together, just through the nature of our business. I was really surprised exactly how harsh Alex gets when things are going wrong. And I was like, oh, there he is. There's the raid leader. And you're right. It needs to be done sometimes, especially if the mood isn't... It's all fun and games until people start falling over their own shoelaces. And that's when the problems start, because we're not going to tolerate that. Like we're here to do we're using our time to do something. And I know a lot of people don't like it, but it is something I find particularly helpful.
Yeah, we also had the issues of, and that affected in some way, that the whole famous story of water in the computer with Kungen. Like, whenever we stopped progressing for a tier and started to go to farm, Kungen would basically go MIA. I don't know, he probably needs to recharge his batteries and whatever, and that's completely fine. He's also only a human being. But that meant there was also a fluctuation in like raid leading. Like, I had to do it sometimes, and I think the priest called Crowley did it at some times as well. So there was also like a lot of changes in like how you led the raid. Also, like, that's a huge thing if you were going to be honest. Like, how you distributed loot and everything was also like a benefactor of everything. Like,
well, you're going to divide you're dividing your own team then, right? One team prefers it one way, the other team prefers it a different way, and therefore, depending on who's leading, some people might not want even be in the raid because they don't like how they deal with things.
If you want to look at it myself, I'm not going to say I'm super proud of it, but the way I distributed loot was, and I can see why it's wrong if you want to look at it on a guild as a big, like in the big picture. But I tended to give the loot to the best players in the raid. But from my perspective, I did it because we needed the best gear possibly on the best players, because that was the one that drove our raid to kill the bosses. But I can understand that if you are not looked on as a top performer and you didn't get that much gear, it must have been demotivating.
Oh, for sure.
And even if that person didn't perform as well as others, he was still an important part of our raid team. And if he or she left at some point and we had to replace him, it's always hard to replace a person. Sometimes you get really lucky, but it also it takes time for a person to like really mellow into the guild as well. So that obviously played a big part of it as well, going back to what I said before, that I think the biggest downfall was the roster and the whole mentality in the roster.
Do you think there was a tiredness there, or were you seeing, like I mentioned earlier, I did speak to the Mythic guys about this, is that some people were like revolving doors. So this was a problem I encountered in Wrath when I joined, was that the guild core, whenever new trials come, at that point they were so tired of seeing trials come, stick around, doesn't matter if they're a good player or not, and then leave because they'd like got the tag, like, hey, I was in Method. And that's what really they were after, was that I played there. And then they would just leave. And I know the player base, or the core players of the guild, were so tired and frustrated of those people that they didn't even look at them as part of the guild. Yeah. Do you feel that was a factor in, like, what I'm getting from this is the guild became quite cliquey. So the people who were the originators, they became one half, and then all these new trials kind of became the second half, and you had to work your ass off to move up from that process, maybe far more than was reasonable.
Yeah, and you're right about that, especially the last part, because we were extremely elitist in our perception of people. So if you didn't really perform from day one, a lot of people would look at you as just another new guy being stupidly bad at the game, just calling it out harsh. And obviously that's hard for a new member joining the guild. To get that pressure from day one, you need to be built of something special to go in and perform above other long raiding guild members. So
that is hard.
It wasn't the
we expect you to be better than the guys that are already here, which is something that happens a lot. Like, not only do you need to be good, you need to be better than the guys who have already claimed many world firsts. And you're like, dude, come on now.
Yeah. So I know that like all the new recruits didn't have the easiest time, but like you're young and you learn, and like you have to look at it like we were just computer gamers back then. Our man managing skills weren't probably the best. So.
Well, I can vouch that you're not like that anymore.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
you. I can vouch that is not the case anymore. You actually remind me very much of myself back then, is saying stupid stuff like, if I could play everybody's character, we would have killed this by now. You know, like sitting on this throne of bullshit. But then, so obviously the guild died. Like, I mean, was that a real thing? Was the guild just dead until, was there a conversation, or was it the plan for a long time? How did 25th November roll around, I suppose?
I'm not quite sure about the details, but and like, because there's also a big part of we don't 100% know for how long Kungen talked to Maxter and Mech about it. I think it was at least
Maxter and Mech, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was at least those two people.
Mm-hmm.
But
so how did you find out?
Well, we were obviously involved. The offices in Nihilum were like around like the talk. But it was a kind of funny like startup, because if I remember correctly, and I'm not 120% sure, so don't shoot me if I'm wrong, but we, like, SK came with 2 officers, and we brought one, which was Kungen, and the other officers in the guild wanted to push me as being the second counterpart of Nihilum. Mm-hmm. But that never really like came to fruition.
Did you want it?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, yeah, I want some pie.
give me some more pie, boy.
Give me some pie.
No, obviously I wanted it, but also because not a completely selfish reason, but also because I thought I could be a positive benefactor of like leading the guild, or being a part of like making it the roster wise from the bottom down. Because
so you're thinking that if it's 2 versus 1 with Kungen, then some of the people aren't going to get into the roster because the other 2 are going to push their guys.
It was always going to be, if you look at it very harsh and black and white, like, and I'm sure they're going to deny this, but it was always going to be 2 versus 1, like in leader votes. Mm-hmm. So that was always going to like create some disharmony from a leader standpoint. So it would have been, obviously it worked out fine. So, but it would have been more fair, like if we brought 2 leaders and they had 2 leaders. Mm-hmm. But instead we ended up having the leadership of Mech, and Kungen, and then a lot of us became class officers, and then obviously normal raiding members. Normal sounds so harsh, but regular raiding members.
Yeah. So you must have had a roster of what, like 35 people? Maybe more?
No, because again, I wasn't 100% involved in the picking and choosing, but they made spreadsheets even back then, got a lot of some spreadsheets of who they wanted in what role, and then I'm guessing they handpicked the best of the both skills, and to make the guild as best as possible. Did
you agree with that? Or did you lose any friends?
No, I 100% agree on that. I didn't lose any friends.
That's awesome.
But that's going back to, if you look at it from a personal point of view, like coming from Counter-Strike, I always want to win when I play. So you always want to have the best starting lineup.
So there's a dark side of that, which is like, yeah, that guy didn't make it. Not surprised.
But you didn't have the same. Well, I didn't at least have the same relationship, and maybe it sounds harsh. I don't mean it in a harsh way, but I didn't have the same relationship with a lot of the raiding members in Sunwell as I did in Black Temple, because it was completely different people. Yep. So obviously, if you build up a friendship over years, you're maybe feeling a bit more sad about him, like say person X doesn't get into the guild because he's probably not the greatest player, but he's a hell of a guy on TeamSpeak or something else. Mm-hmm. But we didn't really have that, because the people I usually hung around with or played with, or that I played with for many years, were the better people of the guild, and everyone joined the merger. So
yeah, I see what you're saying. So you were already in the circle of people that was likely to go forward into the new team. Exactly. Why all the secrecy then? So you launched without revealing the name. I kind of feel like theory, the website just wasn't ready. So, something really dumb like that.
I'm gonna be honest. I can't remember really. I really tried to remember the reason. I can't remember. All I remember is it was a meme inside the guild as well.
Yeah,
like
it
no
sounds
one really
so stupid.
Yeah, it was way too hyped for a WoW guild. I mean,
yeah, it was. Okay, so for any listeners who don't understand what happened, is that as SK Gaming and Nihilum, the merger was announced, I think, late TBC for Wrath of the Lich King, but then there was this mystery around the guild, and that it was going to be announced, and then you all changed your name to 25th November as the big announcement of the guild, which I think was a week after Wrath of the Lich King came out.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It was something dumb like that, and then the name was announced. Everyone went, "Wow!"
remember.
But you, like I say, you did spoil rating for a lot of us because I was still leveling when this happened. I was around World 40th at the time, and obviously paying a little bit of attention to this whole 25th November thing, thinking it was dumb as fuck. And then suddenly the announcement came across our guild saying, "Okay, they've killed everything." And we were like, what? What do you mean? It's like they've cleared Nax, they've killed... But you did do it on the easy mode, it should be noted. But you did Naxxramas, Malagos, and Sartharion on the day Wrath of the Lich King released.
Yeah.
So what the hell was that? Like, was there a lot of organization, or was it like, if the first to cap goes, that's it?
It's gonna be hard to say, and because I was leveling a Death Knight Mike, so I didn't get to join the free first raid. So thank you very much.
You were a DK,
yeah, I were. So all my Realm first titles, they're long gone. I never got them. So thank you for putting salt in the wound.
I'm not. We're trying to get. Yeah, this is important WoW history, and we're all nerds here.
No. I just think we were prepared. We played a lot of beta back then, and we knew what we went into. So preparation were key there. Yeah. And obviously, as I said, it is normal mode, so it's going to be easier than Mythic, but we were still really, really prepared. We played a lot of Mythic. We played a lot of, put a lot of time into it. People went all out for leveling fast, so...
I have found the picture.
Oh.
I'm doing my research while we're talking here, and I found the picture that was sent across the airwaves. It was actually an MMO champion. Where everybody is in this guild 25th November for some fucking reason. And you're right, you're not in the screenshot, you absolute scum.
Yeah, I was busy in Nagranda, wherever it was back then. Borean Thunder, probably.
Yeah, and everyone's still, interestingly enough, I'd forgot this, everyone is just wearing their vanilla Naxxramas gear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, TBC gear, I should say. Everyone's wearing the Burning Crusade tier 6. That's kind of sad. That's how, in context to how easy, I mean, you went from the world first of Kel'Thuzad to how easy Wrath of the Lich King was. Oh my god, it was so sad.
Yeah, it was probably a bit undertuned.
A little bit.
Or maybe we were just overtuned as persons and people.
I don't think so. I think it was very undertuned. I would like to give you credit for that, but unfortunately, Wrath of the Lich King raiding's first tier was notoriously easy. Outside of the challenge modes, Sartharion 3 Drakes, but nothing in Naxxramas. Even Immortal was more RNG than anything.
Yeah.
To get it done. I believe you do have the Immortal title like me.
Yeah, we do, of course.
We're cool dudes like that.
Yeah. Read the models.
Well, this brings us then, I guess, to the actual point that I asked for this discussion with Mr. Kenny, is one of the most impressive boss kills in the history of World of Warcraft for me was the world first of Firefighter. And there's a reason I chose this out of every fight that's ever taken place in all the world first, because it is a world first, but it's not the end mode, because Algalon was the final boss of that dungeon, or Yogg-Saron Zero Lights, if you want to call it that. It did take place in Ulduar, but all we heard, because I hadn't reached Firefighter yet, I think I was doing Freya 3, was that, oh my god, have you seen what Firefighter is like? That was all that was resonating through the high-end WoW community at the time, was like, do you understand what's happening at Firefighter? Because obviously a big discussion that was happening in Ulduar was, what is the hard mode? So Nihilum had been caught in some controversy, I think, for using flower power on Hodir, where you guys kited a bunch of flowers from Freya's area, which gave them a magic damage buff and and kept them alive throughout the fight, right? So the mages could spell steal off them. Yeah. Because that was just a DPS race. But there was a reason for that, is that I'm not sure who your competition was. It might have been Method.
I'm pretty sure it was Method.
Yeah, I think Method had killed Hodir hard mode the day before, and then Blizzard hotfixed the boss after that had happened to make it harder. Something like that. So Nihilum cheated, quote unquote. They used a clever use of game mechanics in order to get around it. But then the wall hit, which was Firefighter. You both hit Firefighter. You could obviously look at it in 10-man, but no one ever really, certainly at the stage that you guys were progressing, no one ever really got past phase 1. And Firefighter, the big contribution, of course, was the fire. Which needed to it reset like twice in the fight or 3 times, but it had to actually be kited by players. Although you couldn't track it or anything, it was kited by the players to control it and feel the atmosphere, and everything was considerably more deadly. What's it for the people who've never raided progress? Because obviously, so few of the World of Warcraft players get to tackle a boss that hasn't been killed. Yeah. That is a thing that is for the very, very privileged few to tackle a boss that hasn't already been killed, and most people know how it's done. By the time they get there, they know what they're going to do. They've seen videos.
Yeah.
First of all, take us through what it's like when you hit a boss like this. That's like, oh shit, this thing is fucking real.
Well, it's hectic.
It is a hectic fight.
It's a hectic fight. A lot of stuff is going on, and like as you said yourself, I'm not going to say anyone, but anyone can DPS a boss where they know what to do. They read hundreds of guides and seen everything, and obviously it's that boss is going to be easy. But when you step into new territory, you've never seen what the boss do. You've never seen how much damage the abilities do, and you're unsure of where to move when. You start to get challenged on your playing skills because like it affects the way you perform, because you get more stressed as a person as well, and you're more inclined to do like mistakes and errors. So
yeah, it's one of those that like people don't appreciate how often they'll even like you just brought up positioning. Like, how many guilds go into boss fights and know where the boss should be put based on the fact that they've seen people figure this stuff out? And the World First Race does draw a lot of attention to this. You can actually follow how the guys figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons I love beta testing when we can do it. I have a mixed feeling of beta testing, but one thing I do enjoy is that we pull that boss, we don't know what's going to happen. We have no idea. And it is very, very fun to experience that. But now you're fighting it through.
And I think that for me is the biggest factor we're talking about, is there was so much going on in that fight. Like you couldn't position yourself. You had to adapt all the time. And it was a long fight. Obviously you had the small breaks in between, as you said, to like mentally reset or how you want to call it. But it was a fight with so much movement, and you couldn't be static, and you had to like adapt like immediately when stuff happened. Like combining that with a long fight and still the damage requirements, that made it probably one of the roughest fights I've ever experienced.
How close have you gotten the boss to killing it before you actually got the kill? Have you experienced the final phase a few times before that point? Or was it rare? You know, like Kill Jaden, I think I would go to Kill Jaden for this, is that it's such a long fight like Firefighter is. And when you get that last phase, you have to relearn the fight because, and it's not easy to get there. You know what I mean? It's you can get there and then you got 6 pulls where you don't even see it, and then you have to relearn the fight again in order to adjust things. Yeah. How close had you gotten? Do you remember?
Yeah, we got it several times before we got the kill, and like one of the more tricky things about the boss as well is in the last phase was 3 different components that you needed to damage, and you needed to kill them at the same time. And if you didn't kill them at the same time, it would heal up after X amount of time. So that was obviously a bit of coordination in it, like, and that required the damage dealers to use. I'm going to be rough and say to use their brain, but to look at the boss health on the different components and to make sure it reached 0 at the same time. Else you are basically, start over all again, have fun.
It's something to clarify because I don't think people realize, like, it's hard to explain, but when there's a fight like this, not a lot of people, the reason I want to explain this, although some of you will have done very hard mythic fights before, is not a lot of people do, as we know. They always call it the 1% or whatever. But when you've got a fight like this, which comes around once every now and again, where it's literally, I always compare it to like the beach at Saving Private Ryan, not to be disrespectful, but there's just so much happening all the time. it's very easy, especially as DPSers, to kind of just lock onto a target and just keep avoiding stuff while DPSing. And then you have this fight where it's like, you can't do that. You need to be paying attention to even more than that. You can't just stay alive. You have to be punishing the boss and managing it at the same time, all the way till the actual death. And you're undergeared as well. So every drop of damage you put into the wrong place actually is counterintuitive to how this fight is going to die.
And you also have to kite fires on top of that. So
at the same time.
So obviously there was a lot of stuff going on in the fight. And you couldn't really, like, okay, you could say this group damaged target 1, this group damaged target 2, and this group damaged target 3. But you would still always need that adaptive balance to it, because you needed to look at, okay, group 1 is way ahead of group 3, and group 2 is on pace, and everything. So there's also that little chess game in the middle of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of like pieces that needed to go up in the end for it to be successful. So that is, for me, why it was so hard.
One thing I do want to ask everybody who we're interviewing for this video is, was there ever a point, because I know I'm going to encounter this with a couple of the other fights, where you thought this fight isn't doable and you needed to keep pushing anyway? Because that's a situation that has popped up several times in the past. But did you know from, like, okay, this is doable? Because one of the biggest killers of motivation, and I think Alone in the Darkness, which you just mentioned there with, what's he called? The last boss in there?
Sifun? No,
Yogg-Saron. Yeah. Is guilds, the interesting thing about that fight is guilds gave up. And I'm hoping to be interviewing someone from Stars who was there who kept pushing, but guilds like Ensidia and Method just thought this fight is broken and bugged. We're just going to wait till Blizzard fixes it, which it wasn't. It was totally doable, as we all found out quite rather suddenly. Yeah. Was there ever a point here, because you're in that position? Nobody has killed this fight. Did you ever feel that way?
No, I don't think I will believe that before I actually hit in rage and I'm still seeing the boss at 99% to exaggerate. I don't think a boss is unkillable before you either see the damage it deals is just too hard for the healers to maintain, or the damage it deals to tanks is too hard compared to the gear you can actually achieve in the raid, or, like as I said, the enraged timer is impossible to reach. Then if those 3 criteria is not met, I don't think a boss is unkillable. I think the only time I've experienced that in my raiding days were back when we were progressing Sifun. That was unkillable.
Oh, yeah. So you were there for the unkillable Cthulhu.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah. Super fun times.
I don't think Nihilum claimed the world first there, did they? Because they hotfixed it. I think some American guild got it, if I remember right.
We did, Mike. Not that I want to brag.
Did? Was Nihilum the world first Cthulhu?
Yeah.
Oh, well, tell us a little bit about that to finish up. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about Firefighter? Because it was a monumental thing to do. I think we both agree Algalon was crushingly disappointing. I killed Firefighter shortly after you guys did, but I remember going to Algalon and being like, okay. Really?
It was a fight that, like, kind of showed that we made. I'm gonna sound all soft as a person, but it kind of showed us that we made the right choices at Guilds of Merging, because even though it was a hard fight, the morale never went down. There was always high spirits in the raid or in the guild as a whole. So I'm gonna say that was a big showing that you did the right things, because you're always gonna wonder if you did the right thing, going from something you built up over so many years to something completely new, and going over to, let's just say, winner joining the new top dogs. You're always thinking about it if you did the right thing. But
well, I have to ask the question then, because I believe this. I think Algalon was the last world first of Ensidia.
Yeah.
And the guild died. Did you finish Nax? Oh, you had the guild banned in Naxxramas? No?
Are you talking about Wrath of the Lich King or what?
Wrath of the Lich King. Yeah, because this is Ulduar. So the instance after this would have been Trial of Crusader, which Paragon took.
It's probably Wrath of the Naxxramas. We got people banned from the Saronite thing at the Lich King.
Yes. So it was after this. I believe it was Algalon was the last world first of Ensidia.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where you guys came with the Lich King, because Paragon was first.
I think we were top 5 or top 10. I can't remember.
Was that? Yeah. So I'm just wondering, is there any comment there that during this time when you cleared Algalon, the motivation was extremely good? Really happy with the decisions you made, but that was the beginning, or seemingly the beginning of the end. Was that just because Paragon rose to be, as we know now, Paragon were just absolute fucking monsters of raiding?
Obviously, it doesn't help morale to get steamrolled, but I wouldn't say the morale were like low in general. We just started to underperform, and then we come back to the same issues as maybe Nihilum, where we started to replace a lot of people in the roster as well. So it's always a combination of those two. And probably, as you see, Paragon, I think it was in Call of the Crusade, they just started to blast through on Anubarak and everything.
I believe I'm trying to get hold of somebody to interview with the Paragon. Hopefully I can get hold of Lape or someone. But I believe they were really, really high on Alone in the Darkness, and that's where their name kind of came to attention.
Yeah.
But then they took the world first in Trial of the Crusader. But people, the interesting thing about Paragon, from what I can tell during my research for this, is that people called them cheesy because they used a stun, a non-DR'd stun thing in order to kill Anubarak.
Yeah,
so people didn't. Yeah, people didn't really consider it like a legit thing. It's just that they found kind of a go-around for one of the hard mechanics.
Yeah.
But then obviously their performance into ICC was extremely good, and onwards until the guild did stop. So
I'm not going to say we did completely bad before the end of Icecrown, because even in Call of the Crusade, call the instance what you want, we still got world first on the Valkyrie twins. So we were still up there until the very end, but they just hammered us on Anubarak. But obviously, if you
tell us about the banning, because this is when it kind of comes to a stop, because they didn't. Ensidia did not continue into the Cataclysm. I don't think.
No.
I don't think. But Nihiko, and this is something I always bring up, is I'm not friends with him, but I'm aware I've played with Nihiko before. Nihiko was the person who was using the grenades that got Ensidia banned. Now, knowing Nihiko, he used the grenades ever since I knew him. I did play with him in Wrath of the Lich King. It was a very normal part of his rotation, and he's a super nice guy. I have no doubts in my mind he had no idea what was causing it. Obviously, there's a lot of stigma around that. That of course they knew it was building up. So for clarity for our listeners is you guys killed, I believe, the Lich King normal first, but the platform was rebuilding itself, which it's not supposed to do. And Blizzard not only took that away, but also banned you. So you couldn't gear up for, and in fact, I believe you banned your characters, if I'm correct. They banned the characters that were involved, but didn't ban your accounts.
No.
In order to kind of scuff your world first race, and you guys just went in on alts and killed the Lich King and were like, this fight isn't even hard or normal for our level of play. No. Like, this is ridiculous that you think we would need to cheat in order to do this. But how was the motivation in the guild? What did you think about it? Am I wrong? Did Nihiko know? I mean, I believe not, because I played with him, and he used that every boss I ever knew him on.
I don't think he 100% knew, but I'm going to say as a person, you obviously would, as a person, see a pattern. If you do the same thing every time and you see the platform spawn every time you put a bomb on the ground, you probably connect the dots. But
okay.
I'm going to assume, trusting that he didn't know he did something wrong, or like he didn't at least intentionally bug it. But as a person, you should probably know that if you throw a bomb and the platform spawns every time you throw a bomb, there's probably something wrong with the fight.
So, take me through what happened then. Was it immediate? Did it just reappear? Or was it like reanimating?
It's hard to say if it instant like spawn, but you just noticed, as a guy that I've never used the bombs or like engineering in general, but you just saw the platform spawning randomly now and then, and you were like thinking, what the heck is going on?
Was the conversation happening on comms at the time? Like, is anybody doing anything? What's happening here? Oh,
There were obviously confusion, and I'm not even trying to wash my hands now, but I really don't recall what happened in like the further we progressed on the fight, if people were actually 100% in on what was going on and everything. But there were obviously confusion in the first tries that went on, if you see the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
But
it sounds like you have some suspicions that you do think some people did know, or is it just like you would have known? Is that more your perspective? You would have known.
I would 100% assume that you would know it, but that's just going out from a logical point of view that I can understand if it happens once, that can be random timing. But if you see a pattern that it happens every time you do something, there's something behind it probably, and that is probably the reason behind.
Okay.
But then, as I said, because I'm an old man and my memory isn't the strongest as a long time ago, I'm not sure if Nahiko was the only one using bombs or the other rogues were using it in their rotation, like because the guild consisted of min-maxons.
Yeah.
And if like, let's say, rogues gained a lot from having engineering and the Saronite bombs, I would assume that more people used it.
It was normal, yeah. It was an absolutely normal thing to use the Saronite bombs as DPS for min-maxes.
So you can always throw more cannon to the fodder and say if more people did the thing, you would obviously see a trend in it.
Yeah, I want to be clear here. The reason we brought up Nahiko in particular is because I believe he's the one who got the blame. So Kenny might be absolutely right, is that multiple people were using Saronite bombs. It's just that he got the blame for it when it kind of came out. That's why I defend him, because I was like, that guy would never cheat. Like, you just know that dude is like, he's not a cheater. No. And again, it didn't need to happen in the first place. No. So what was the mood in the guild at the time? Like, you get this notification, it's like, you're banned, and it's like it's on your main characters, it's going to affect the world first race. It must have been a nail.
Obviously, it caused a lot of distress and like a lot of negativity in the guild. But I always thought, going back to what I said regarding Firefighter, like way above my expectations. The like friendship and the community in Ensidia, considering we merged, was actually extremely high. We always had fun on TeamSpeak, and it's not gonna dampen our morale that hard that we're gonna be sad faces, like mopey faces going on, where you can't do anything about it, but go on. Mm-hmm. But obviously when the ban happens itself, you're not gonna be having the best day of your life. Let's just put it like that.
I can relate. I've been banned as well. I can relate. To log in to see you can't log into this character for a month, I was like, oh, come on. God damn it. That is the saddest thing. Let's wrap this up then. So before, it's been an awesome interview. Thank you, Kenny, for your time. Is there anything that you think, actually, because I chose Firefighter, so that's my decision, which is why I wanted to reach out to you. But is there something else that I know before we started talking, I was like, well, is there something that you think is actually more impressive that's your favourite boss kill?
Are we speaking in general now, or from my point of view?
Just for you personally, like, that you were like, that was the one for me.
No, I actually think you hit the hammer on the nail with the two bosses you chose. I think the Cloze was probably the biggest for me, because it was the end boss, and it was the first time we really got world first. And the whole dedication and the whole story surrounding it, and the boss fight itself being what it is, that was for me probably the biggest. But like, if you look at it from all of the things going on, Firefighter is for sure number 2 on my list.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time, dude.
Yeah, of course.
I appreciate it. I hope people enjoy it too.
Yeah, I do as
well. All right. If you want to say goodbye to everybody, we'll probably put this out on Patreon for people to listen to in the full version. But thank you very much.
Of course, Mike. No problem.